How the Amish kill weeds fast and keep their fields clean for good. Now, before you click away thinking this is just another video about vinegar and salt, I need you to stay with me, because what I'm about to reveal is something that changes everything about how you understand weed control. And it's the one thing nobody talks about. At the end of this video, I'm going to show you the real reason why Amish farms stay weed-free year after year, while the rest of us are constantly battling the same patches over and over. It's not the method, it's something much deeper than that. Stay with me. Before we go any further, if you've been struggling with weeds, and I mean really struggling, like spending hundreds of dollars a year on chemicals or sprays that don't stick, I want you to do something right now. Subscribe to this channel. There's a complete guide waiting for you in the description and pinned right at the top of the comments that breaks down not just the methods, but the entire philosophy behind how generations of homesteaders have kept their property clean without modern herbicides. And I'd love to hear from you in the comments. What's your biggest weed problem right now? Is it your driveway, your fence line, your garden beds? Tell me, because you're not alone. Wait, this is the part where I need your full attention for just a second. Here's what nobody in the lawn care industry wants you to know. They've built an entire business model around repeat customers. You buy their product, it works for a few weeks, the weeds come back, you buy it again. 3 months later, another $50. By the end of the year, you've spent $300, maybe $400, and the weeds are still there. You're on a treadmill, and the companies selling the solutions are the ones who built the machine. The Amish figured this out centuries ago. But their solution wasn't about finding a better chemical or a stronger spray. It was something that flipped the entire problem upside down. See, most people approach weeds like they're the enemy to be destroyed with overwhelming force. Spray them, burn them, poison them, kill them dead so they never come back. But that's reactive thinking. That's what keeps you on the treadmill. The Amish approach this completely differently. They don't ask, how do I kill the weeds that are already here? They ask a different question entirely. Why are weeds growing in the first place? And that question changes everything. The reason weeds are winning in most American yards isn't because there aren't enough chemicals being sprayed. It's because there's bare soil. Naked, exposed, sun-baked soil. And the moment you have bare soil, you have invited every weed seed that blows in on the wind to take root. It's not an invasion. It's an invitation. The soil is literally saying, come here, seeds. There's sunlight, there's space, there's everything you need to grow. But soil that's covered, truly covered with mulch, with living plants, with compost, with the organic layers that build over time, that soil doesn't have room for weeds to establish. And that's the secret the chemical companies don't want you to know. Now, let me be completely clear with you. The Amish absolutely do use mechanical and natural methods to kill weeds that are already there. Vinegar works. Boiling water works. Hand pulling works. Flame torches work on certain weeds at certain times. But here's the part that's revolutionary. They don't rely on these methods as the main defense. They use them as supplements, as maintenance tools, not as the primary strategy. The primary strategy is prevention through soil management. Think about what Amish farmers do with every scrap of organic material. Kitchen waste becomes compost. Animal manure becomes composted bedding that feeds the fields. Crop residue gets tilled back into the soil. Grass clippings, leaves, straw, all of it returns to the earth. This isn't done because they're environmentally virtuous, though they are. It's done because they understand a principle of agriculture that modern farming has almost completely abandoned. Healthy soil feeds healthy plants. Healthy, densely grown plants leave no room for weeds. This is why those same Amish fields can stay clean for entire seasons with minimal chemical input, while conventional yards need spraying every 3 weeks. The soil under an Amish farm is a living ecosystem. It's full of organisms, nutrients, structure, and life. The soil under a typical American lawn treated with herbicides is depleted, compacted, lifeless, and it's basically a weed seed incubator waiting to be colonized. So here's the uncomfortable truth that nobody in the weed-killing industry wants to say out loud. You cannot sustainably win a war against weeds using only top-down methods. Sprays, chemicals, flame torches. You can suppress them, you can manage them, you can win temporary battles, but you cannot win the war unless you change what's happening below ground. The Amish figured this out because they've been farming the same fields for generations. They realized that if you poison the soil enough times trying to kill the weeds, Eventually, the soil itself stopped supporting anything healthy. So they stopped asking, what kills weeds, and started asking, what creates soil that weeds don't want to grow in? And that changes the entire strategy. Instead of asking what herbicide to use, you ask, how do I deny light to the soil? How do I eliminate bare soil? How do I create an environment where a weed seed might land, but it simply cannot germinate? When you frame the problem that way, the solutions become obvious, and they're almost free. But before I break down exactly how to do this, and what methods the Amish use to build soil instead of just kill weeds, I want you to understand something fundamental that's going to reshape how you garden or farm from this moment forward. Most of us have been taught to think about farming and gardening in seasons: spring, summer, fall, winter. 4 cycles, 4 resets. The Amish think about it in years and decades. They're building soil today that will be perfect 15 years from now. That's not a romantic notion. That's a practical calculation. Rich soil that's been built over years means fewer weeds, less work, lower costs, and higher yields. It's the most economically rational decision a farmer can make. So when an Amish farmer decides to invest a full day of labor spreading compost on a field that could instead be used to spray a $10 bottle of herbicide, it's not because he's rejecting modernity. It's because he's done the math over decades, and he knows which method actually saves money in the long run. Now, this is where the strategy starts to get specific, and this is exactly what the full guide in the description breaks down in meticulous detail: the calendar, the methods, the exact sequences of soil building that turn a weed-infested property into a clean one over the course of a single year. The first layer is always mulch, and not the pretty bark mulch you buy in bags at the garden center. I mean the working mulch: compost, aged manure, leaf mold, straw, grass clippings, everything that's brown and decomposing. An Amish farmer will lay this thick, 3 to 6 inches depending on what he's growing. This does 3 things at once. First, it blocks light from reaching soil, which prevents most weed seeds from even germinating. Second, as it breaks down, it feeds the soil with nutrients and organic matter. Third, it makes the soil soft and easy to pull from if a weed does somehow make it through. But mulch alone isn't the whole story. Because mulch eventually breaks down, it becomes soil. And the question becomes, what kind of soil is it becoming? Depleted soil? Or living soil? This is where the second part of the strategy comes in, and it's where most modern gardening gets it wrong completely. The Amish don't just add mulch to their beds and call it done. They add living systems, animals, organisms, things that work while they sleep. A chicken run rotates through the garden. A compost pile sits at the edge. Earthworms are encouraged and protected. Beneficial insects are given habitat. The soil isn't treated as an inert material to be managed from the outside. It's treated as a living community that's being fed, supported, and leveraged to do the actual work of preventing weeds. When you introduce animals into a garden rotation, even just for a season or two, they break down organic matter faster. They spread nutrients more evenly. They create the kind of biological chaos that makes it almost impossible for weeds to establish a foothold because the soil ecosystem is too vibrant and competitive. The weed seeds still land on this soil. The wind still blows them in. Birds still carry them from neighboring fields. But the environment they land in is so hostile to weed germination and growth that most simply don't take, and the few that do are easy to pull because the soil is soft and alive, not compacted and dead. This is the revelation. This is what changes everything. You don't win against weeds by fighting them harder. You win against weeds by creating soil conditions where they can't win. And building that soil is not complicated. It's not expensive. It's not even that difficult. It just requires a shift in how you think about your property over time. The Amish have been doing this for centuries, not because they had secret knowledge or special chemicals, because they were solving a real problem, keeping their fields clean and productive, using the tools they had and the time they were willing to invest. And the solution they found works so well that a farmer can spend less time on weeds, not more, compared to someone buying bottles of herbicide every month. Now here's where most people get stuck. They know the principle: build better soil, fewer weeds grow. But they don't know where to start. They stand in their yard looking at an overgrown mess and think, this will take me 5 years to fix, and so they reach for the bottle again. But that's not how this works. The fastest way to improve your soil is to stop removing organic matter from it. Every time you pull a weed and throw it in the trash, you're taking carbon out of your system. Every fallen leaf you rake away is potential fertility walking out the door. The Amish farmers I've watched don't fight this. They work with it. Dead plants go back into the soil. Leaves stay where they fall. Kitchen scraps get composted right on the garden edge. In one season, not 5 years, but one season, you'll see a measurable difference in how your soil holds moisture, how easy it is to pull weeds, and how thick your mulch layer becomes just from letting nature do its work. The second shift is density. Bare soil grows weeds. It's that simple. The sun hits the ground, weed seeds germinate, and within weeks you've got a problem. But thick planting, where vegetables or flowers are close enough together that their leaves shade the soil, creates a natural weed barrier. You're not fighting weeds, you're crowding them out. A professional landscaper will charge you $8 to $1.200 to design and install a dense perennial bed that suppresses weeds naturally. You can do the exact same thing for $4 in plant starts and seeds by spacing them properly and letting them mature. Here's a specific example. Last spring, a homesteader near here had a 200-square-foot vegetable patch. Weeds were winning. She was out there 3 times a week pulling them. In June, she planted lettuce, spinach, and kale so densely that the plants were almost touching at maturity. She also planted fast-growing herbs, cilantro, parsley, dill, in every gap. By July, you couldn't see the soil. By August, weeds had almost completely stopped showing up. She went from 20 hours of weeding to maybe 2 hours for the entire season. Her yield actually doubled because healthy soil and dense planting means healthier plants and more production. The third shift is mulch management. And before you think this is expensive, it isn't. The best mulch sources cost nothing. Grass clippings from your own lawn, shredded leaves in fall, straw left over from animal bedding, even cardboard laid flat before you add wood chips. These materials break down, feed the soil, and suppress weeds all at once. A 4-inch mulch layer stops 95% of annual weed seeds from germinating because they need light to sprout. No light, no germination, no problem. Now, before we continue deeper into how these 3 shifts compound over time, I need you to keep something in mind for a second. Everything I'm describing here works best when you understand the full reasoning behind it. The complete system, how soil pH interacts with plant health, how microbial activity affects weed pressure, how water retention ties into all of this. That's all mapped out in detail in the full guide I've put together, which is available in the description and pinned comment. If you want to go much deeper and avoid the mistakes that turn a small project into a season-long headache, that's where all the mechanisms are explained. Back to the compound effect. These 3 shifts don't just work independently. They amplify each other. Better soil means plants grow faster, which means denser canopies, which means more shade, which means fewer weeds. More organic matter in the soil means more water retention, which means stronger plants, which means they outcompete weeds even in dry spells. A thick mulch layer protects the improving soil, keeps moisture in, and gradually becomes rich compost itself as it breaks down. The Amish farmers call this letting the land remember what it was. Because these aren't new tricks, they're the opposite. They're what farming looked like before chemicals, before monoculture, before the idea that you could poison your way to clean fields. A 200-year-old farm in Lancaster County looks the way it does. Diverse, productive, relatively weed-free. Because that farmer has spent 2 centuries building soil instead of depleting it. And here's the money part. Let's actually count it. A homeowner spending $2.00 to $3 a year on commercial herbicides for 15 years is $3 to $4.55 spent on something that requires constant reapplication. An Amish farmer spending maybe $1 a year on compost inputs, mulch materials, and occasional seed for cover crops over 15 years, that's $1.500. But the Amish farmer's soil is progressively better every year. The homeowner's soil hasn't improved. The weed pressure on the Amish farm drops every single year. The homeowner's weed pressure stays the same or gets worse because chemicals don't build soil. They deplete it. One more thing that matters. Chemicals don't distinguish. Glyphosate kills weeds, and it also kills the microbial life in your soil. It kills the earthworms. It damages the mycorrhizal networks that help plants absorb water and nutrients. Over years of application, your soil becomes a dead medium where you have to keep adding expensive inputs just to keep plants alive. You're on a treadmill. The organic approach, soil building, dense planting, mulch, is the opposite. Every year your soil gets richer. Every year your plants get stronger. Every year you need to do less work. The real skill, the thing that separates a farmer from someone just hoping weeds don't show up, is knowing which of these three strategies to emphasize in your specific situation. A brand new property where the soil is compacted clay and thin? You're building. You're importing compost, breaking up the earth, establishing perennials that will hold the soil together over time. A mature garden with decent soil but occasional weed flare-ups? You're maintaining. Mulch refresh, dense replanting, maybe a cover crop in the off-season. A property with problem areas, wet spots where perennial weeds establish, dry corners where only the toughest plants survive. You're problem solving. Different strategies for different spots. This is why the Amish approach works so reliably. It's not dogmatic. It's diagnostic. They look at what they have, they understand what the problem is, and they apply the appropriate solution. No more, no less. And because these solutions work with natural systems instead of against them, they don't create new problems. They solve the one you have and gradually make the whole system more resilient. So the picture is becoming clear. The reason your weeds come back every 3 months when you use commercial herbicides is because you're treating the symptom, not the disease. The disease is poor soil. The symptom is weeds. Treat the disease, and the weeds stop coming back with the same ferocity. Not forever. Seeds will blow in on the wind. That's just life. But the baseline shifts. What once required monthly attention now requires attention once or twice a year. What once cost hundreds now costs dozens. And what once was a constant fight becomes almost automatic, because you're working with how plants actually want to grow, not against it. This is what I meant at the beginning when I said I'd show you the secret that the chemical companies don't want you to know. Not because it's hidden or mysterious, but because there's no money in it for them. When you build soil, you need to buy compost once, maybe some seeds. That's it. When you spray herbicides, you buy them forever. The moment your soil starts getting better is the moment they lose a customer. So they'll keep telling you that their products are the only way. They're not. They never were. This is the secret I promised you at the beginning. It's not a chemical. It's not a bottle you buy and spray and hope works. It's this. The fastest, most honest way to kill weeds for good is not to kill the weeds themselves. It's to make them irrelevant. When your soil is alive and healthy and full of the nutrients that food plants actually want, weeds become a minor inconvenience, not a crisis. They come up here and there, sure. The wind still blows seeds in. The birds still drop them over the fence. But they never take over because the space is already occupied by plants you planted there on purpose. They're crowding out the weeds before the weeds even have a chance to establish themselves. That's the business that the herbicide companies don't want you thinking about. Because once you figure out that your real enemy isn't the weeds, it's the empty space, everything changes. You stop reaching for bottles. You start reaching for compost. You stop asking, how do I kill this? You start asking, what should I plant here instead? And that shift, that small change in how you think about the problem, is worth more than any chemical ever will be. I've been managing land my whole life. My father did it this way, his father before him. And none of them were chemists. None of them had fancy equipment. They just understood one simple principle. Soil feeds plants. Plants crowd out weeds. And when you work with that system instead of against it, your life gets easier every single year. Not harder, easier. The first year, you put in the work. You build the beds, you haul the compost, you plant dense. The second year, the weed pressure is already lower. By the third year, it's become almost automatic. The weeds are so minor that you barely think about them. And here's what that means for your wallet. Instead of spending $2.00 to $4 a year on herbicides that you have to rebuy forever, you spend that money once or twice on compost and amendments. You build something that gets better every single season. You're not in a cycle of buying bottles. You're in a cycle of building soil. Those are two completely different paths, and they lead to completely different places. The Amish and Plain communities don't use herbicides because they understand something that took the rest of us a long time to figure out. It's not that the chemicals don't work. It's that they're expensive, they create dependency, and they don't actually solve the problem, they just manage the symptom. The real solution is older than any of us. It's simpler. And it's been sitting right under our noses the whole time. Healthy soil and intentional planting. So here's what I want you to do this week. Don't buy a bottle of herbicide. Instead, pick one patch of your property. Just one. Doesn't have to be big. And commit to the soil building approach. Add compost if you can. Plant something useful there. Dense planting, good spacing, enough that weeds can't find the room to grow. Don't worry if it's not perfect the first year. That's not the point. The point is you're starting a system that will get better, not worse, with time. That's how you actually win against weeds. That's how you keep your fields clean for good. Thanks so much for watching. If this video helped you think differently about weed management and soil building, please hit that subscribe button and leave a comment down below telling me what patch of your property you're going to try this on. I read every single comment, and I'd love to hear what you're planning. Don't forget to ring that notification bell so you never miss a new upload. We're putting out new homestead hacks and old school solutions every single week. I'll see you in the next one.